It's DUE, tell I see you by this point, you're reading my mind. It's time for football. We about to keep this thing moving. I'm about it, you're with it, let's do it. We gon' make this thing official, you heard me? If you're the best, then let's prove it. The goal is set to have a team become a unit, man. We about to keep this thing moving. I'm about it, you're with it, let's do it. We gon' make this thing official, you heard me? If you're the best, then let's prove it. The goal is set to have a team become a unit, yeah.
Welcome to Football Game Plan's NFL All 32 show. I am Emory Hunt, the czar of the playbook, and today we're going to break down the Houston Texans in the upcoming 2020 NFL season. And before we get things kicked off, let's take a look at some of the key storylines heading into the Texans season as we go into our 4-minute offense. The Houston Texans made a major move this offseason by trading their all-pro #1 wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins to the Arizona Cardinals. Entering his 8th season in the NFL, Hopkins is one of the best receivers in the game and was the #1 target for franchise quarterback Deshaun Watson. Since Watson became the starter, Hopkins had over 96 receptions, 1,100 yards, and 8 touchdowns in those 3 seasons. He also made the Pro Bowl and was named first-team All-Pro in those 3 seasons as well. It was reported that his clash with head coach Bill O'Brien and subsequently looming contract extension was the reason for the trade, but it now puts a lot of pressure on a receiving core that'll feature a couple of new pieces and some inconsistent ones to help keep this offense flowing. Houston traded for Rams wide receiver Brennan Cooks in a move that is a beginning step in the right direction, but will it be enough? Only time will tell. Now, as a result of the Hopkins trade, the Texans were able to acquire former Cardinals running back David Johnson, thus giving them a Johnson & Johnson backfield as Lamar Miller and Carlos Hyde are no longer on the roster, so he'll pair up with Duke Johnson. Now, Houston is hoping that David Johnson, who hasn't had a 1,000-yard season since 2016, is going to regain that form to help a run game that lost a 1,000-yard rusher in Hyde and the explosive Lamar Miller. Duke Johnson is probably the most underappreciated back in the NFL and figures to run sidecar once again to another back in the backfield. He may end up being what the Texans need at the position as he's coming off a season where he averaged nearly 5 yards a carry. In order for this trade of DeAndre Hopkins to not look as bad as it already is, Houston needs this run game to be excellent, with David Johnson being the reason why. J.J. Watt enters the 2020 season with the Houston Texans with the same questions surrounding his long-term prospects with the team. The future Hall of Famer, 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, and 5-time All-Pro has only played a full season once in the last 4 years, and it seems like the physical toll on his body is weighing on his mind as far as how long he will continue to play. Now, there's no doubting the fact that when Watt is out there on the field, he's a legit game breaker, but it's becoming tougher and tougher to count on him being out there for a full season. He just turned 31 years old, and the Texans will have to make some tough decisions in the near future, or Watt could make that decision for them after the season. His situation will be an ongoing story throughout the 2020 campaign. One of the bigger storylines for the Texans entering the season is whether or not they'll be able to shake off the stench of their playoff loss to the Kansas City Chiefs. It wasn't the fact that they lost, it was the fact that they allowed for a Houston Oilers-like collapse to take place. Losing on the last-second kick or getting blown out is one thing, but to lose a huge lead and also get blown out is another thing. The Texans look to be putting together a stellar performance on both ends of the field, similar to what we saw them do the prior week against the Buffalo Bills in a thrilling playoff victory. The good news is that they will have 2 games to draw from as examples on what worked and what didn't work in the playoffs. For this group, they need more of what happened against Buffalo to happen more often, as we've seen this Texans team come out flat far too many times in the playoffs under Bill O'Brien. Deshaun Watson has been as good as advertised for the Houston Texans since they made him their first-round pick back in 2017. He's a star who shines the brightest on the biggest of stages. We've seen that throughout the course of his career, and we also have seen him excel in both the regular season as well as in the playoffs. And now the challenge is to get the Texans to the big game at the end of the season. Make no mistakes about it, he is the guy to get them there. With fellow draft mate Patrick Mahomes and fellow former ACC mate Lamar Jackson winning MVPs the last 2 seasons respectively, maybe this is Deshaun's year to take home the coveted crown, which would be perfect as he's going to be looking for a contract extension very soon. And AJ McCarron gives him a solid veteran backup who has played some decent ball when given the opportunity over his career. We spoke earlier about the new dynamic in the backfield with both David and Duke Johnson. Both guys are very similar backs in terms of what they can do to affect the game. Both are solid running backs and excellent receivers, both out of the backfield and also down the field. Now, where Duke has the edge is in the elusiveness department, and in my opinion, he has a more natural feel for the position. It would be wise to allow him to lead things off and let David grow comfortable in a complementary role within their offense, or even have both guys on the field at the same time. The possibilities and potential creativity is there for offensive coordinator Tim Kelly. Keep an eye out for both Karan Higdon and undrafted rookie free agent Scottie Phillips out of Ole Miss as potential reserves. Higdon made the squad last year as an undrafted free agent, while Phillips has a lot of talent and burst coming out of Ole Miss. Being able to bring in Brandon Cooks does help the Texans receiving core in a couple of ways. First, he brings a steady veteran presence to the core, and second, he adds to the overall explosiveness of the unit. He's still only 26 years old. Yes, he's coming off of a down season, his worst since his rookie year, but he is still one of the most dynamic receivers in the NFL and is a bona fide deep threat. He joins fellow veteran receiver Randall Cobb this year as the new Texans on the perimeter, and Cobb's role is ideally suited for him inside as a slot receiver. He gives them some stability there. Houston hoped that guy would be third-year player Kiki Cutie, who is super talented but hasn't been able to stay on the field because of both health and inconsistency. That has also plagued Will Fuller, who is entering his 5th season in the NFL. Now, there is no doubting the fact that when he's healthy and active, he is making game-changing plays out there on Sunday. He is the best deep ball threat on the team if we're being honest, but reliability is something that matters when you're talking about impact. Veteran Kenny Stills came over in the trade last year with the Dolphins and was able to be productive. His role figures to be more of what we saw last season, but keep an eye out for rookie 5th-round pick Isaiah Coulter out of Rhode Island. His athleticism and style is very similar to Bengals wide receiver AJ Green. We'll see how quickly he can adapt to the step up in competition coming from the FCS. Now, Houston is in a much more stable spot at tight end. They get a ton of production from Darren Fells as well as Jordan Akins. The duo combined for 9 touchdown receptions last year, so it will be interesting to see how Calais Waring fares this season after missing all of his rookie year with a concussion. He and Jordan Thomas will battle it out for the tight end 3 spot. In what used to be a major liability for years, the offensive line quietly and quickly turned into a strength for the Houston Texans last season, more in particular that offensive tackle position. Now, when they acquired Laremy Tunsil last year in a trade that cost them a 1st-round pick, it was widely questioned, but Tunsil proved to be as good as advertised and an integral part to the offense having success. The other part was the standout play from rookie TYTUS Howard out of Alabama State. Howard was able to parlay a solid Senior Bowl week into a 1st-round pick and proved to be able to make the step up in competition rather seamlessly. The Texans now have 2 young stud bookends to help protect Deshaun Watson. On the interior, fellow 2019 rookie Max Sharping stood out as well and figures to be a fixture at guard for Houston. He was able to step in right away and play really well opposite of center Nick Martin, who is the linchpin of this offensive line in my opinion. Now, Zach Fulton and Sino Kelemete give them good options at right guard, and getting Kelemete back helps bolster the depth. And speaking of depth, Greg Mance, Roderick Johnson, and free agent signing Brent Quale from the New York Jets, as well as rookie Charlie Heck, gives them a good rotation up front. Moving over to the defensive side of the ball and starting up front, the strength of this unit depends on the health of J.J. Watt. Now, that's probably obvious, but it is even more critical this year because they lost nose tackle DJ Reader to free agency, who was a standout player, and that puts the focus on Brandon Dunn to elevate his level of play, and for rookie 2nd-round pick Ross Blacklock out of TCU to hit the ground running. Now, Blacklock, in my opinion, is going to be a good one. I'm excited to see what 2nd-year player Charles Omenihu out of Texas can do this season. Last year, he was brought along slowly and figures to contend for a starting role with veteran kick-blocking specialist Angelo Blackson, and now would also be the time for 4th-year player Carlos Watkins to step up and become a much more consistent player. I like what the Texans have at linebacker. This is their strongest unit defensively in my opinion. Whitney Mercilus, Benardrick McKinney, and Zach Cunningham are 3 of the better backers in the NFL. They all bring tremendous length and athleticism to the table. Outside backer Brennan Scarlett was solid for the team last season, contributing with 51 tackles and 3.5 sacks. He will have to fend off rookie 3rd-round pick Jonathan Greenard out of Florida for that starting role. Now, Greenard has a bit more athleticism and ability as a pass rusher, which should get him on the field in certain situations as a rookie. Pass rusher Jacob Martin also gives them solid depth coming off the edge as a situational player, and if Duke EJIOFOR can stay healthy, he could further strengthen the depth at the second level as he has pass rushing chops as well. He's coming off of a torn Achilles last season and has been one injury after the other so far in his short career. The Texans secondary has seen tremendous growth over the years. They were once viewed in the same light as the offensive line, but have quickly turned the corner. Cast-offs from other teams, Marion and Vernon Hargraves, have found success here in Houston, giving them some young players that they can continue to grow with. Bradley Roby was a top corner last year, proving to be a very good matchup piece on their defense. And I like how second-year player Lonnie Johnson Jr. progressed as the season went on and figures to challenge for a starting role this year. In the fourth round, the Texans took John Reed out of Penn State, who is an excellent slot defender. He had a really good week of work at the East-West Shrine Bowl this past January and will be a key reserve and core special teamer as a rookie. Justin Reed is one of the leaders on this defense and has strong instincts to go along with his playmaking ability. Houston was busy this offseason as they signed Eric Murray and Michael Thomas. Murray figures to be the starter opposite of Reed, and Thomas is one of the more underrated combo safeties in the game. He can play virtually anywhere in that secondary and gives them excellent depth and also leadership. He's like the older version of Jalen Watkins, who has the same type of savvy and football IQ as does Thomas. Football Game Plan is brought to you in part by Ninth and Lux. Visit the website ninethandlux.com and check out the clothing gallery. Do You Music with featured artist IW and his latest album, Mr. Hunter. You can find that available on iTunes as well as Spotify. Nesby Phipps, art, life, entertainment. NesbyPhipps.com. Grind It Out Fitness. Visit the website grinditoutfitness.com and download the app. The Academy of Broadcast Media in Hackensack, New Jersey. Football Game Plan is brought to you in part by Financial Coaching LLC, investment, retirement, security. Stewardship Credit, financial growth is in your hands. Stewardshipcredit.com. Adrienne Marie Photo, photographer, writer, management. AdrienneMariePhotography.com. Lock Multimedia. Be sure to order your copy of the Go-Go Offense by Coach Brennan Marion on footballgameplan.com/GoGo Offense. Coach Marion goes through the ins and outs of his explosive offense, one that's tearing up the college football field and putting a lot of points on the scoreboard. Again, you can order your copy at footballgameplan.com/GoGo Offense. Running back Scottie Phillips out of Ole Miss reminds me a lot of Stephen Ridley and how he's a dart and dash type of a runner with above average bursts. He doesn't need volume and could be the type of candidate to make a play a day during training camp. Because of injuries, many forget how good of a player Duke EJIOFOR is and the potential that he brings to the second level. With a clean bill of health, look for him to remind a lot of folks this summer. I like wide receiver Isaiah Coulter out of Rhode Island to be an impact player as a rookie. Between his talents and the current state of the Texans receiving core, he has a chance to make his way up the depth chart and onto the playing field. So does Ross Blacklock out of TCU. He was an underrated prospect coming out of college and lands in a perfect situation to where his burst and quickness off the ball could have him in play for a disruptive rookie season. David Johnson figures to be one of the biggest X factors on this offense. If he can be close to his 2016 form, this offense could provide a different dynamic than seen before. Defensively, Whitney MERCILUS is a solid player, and if he takes steps toward becoming a great player, it would greatly help a defense that finished tied for 26th in sacks. The Texans need MERCILUS to become a game breaker. Look for TYTUS Howard to break out and become one of the better tackles in the division. If last year was of any indication, then 2020 is going to be his year at right tackle. I believe Lonnie Johnson's play will flatline and he'll become more consistent in his second year. He has the matchup capability and the athleticism that you look for, and he'll put it all together in year two. One of the major reasons for optimism for the Houston Texans is the fact that they still have both Deshaun Watson and J.J. Watt. Those are two cornerstone franchise-type players that always give you a chance to win each and every Sunday. As long as both of those guys are out there on the field, the Texans will be fine. They will also be fine because they have a ton of talent. You look at that running back situation they have now with Duke Johnson, even with David Johnson, but I still believe Duke Johnson's a very good player. They're strong at tight end. They have some really good options at receiver. Defensively, we talked about their linebacking core and what they've built in the secondary. So this is still a team that has a ton of talent. And you have to give credit to Bill O'Brien, the head coach. He has gotten this team ready to play each and every Sunday. He has gotten them into the playoffs. They've played 6 playoff games. So he's done a lot with what he has been dealt with a lot of times with injuries and the roster turnover. He's got this team ready to play. And so as long as he's the head coach, they're going to always have a chance. A cause for concern would be if David Johnson doesn't revert back to his 2016 form. That'll be a huge blow to a run game that's depending on him to be that guy that they saw a couple of seasons ago that gives them hope for a productive run game. If not, it's going to make that DeAndre Hopkins trade look that much worse than what it was when we initially saw it. And if JJ Watt can't play at all this season or a full season, anytime he misses out there on the field, it's never a good thing. So as long as he's healthy, they're going to be just fine defensively. But if he's not healthy or if he's dealing with some nagging injuries, things could get ugly for Houston. The road to the Super Bowl for the Texans goes as follows. Number one is just piggybacking off what we just talked about, JJ Watt staying healthy, because if he's out there, they will be, number two, a top 10 defense, because again, that defense getting into the top 10 makes all of the difference. They couldn't really sack the quarterback like they wanted to last year. They didn't really turn the ball over. And if JJ Watt stays healthy and they're able to get to the quarterback, able to be a little bit more disruptive and turn the ball over, their defense getting into the top 10 helps them go far. And if their passing game doesn't miss a beat without DeAndre Hopkins and Deshaun Watson is continuing to do Deshaun Watson things, then the Texans can finally break through in the playoffs and get to the Super Bowl. I have the Houston Texans finishing first in the AFC South. I like where they're going on the back 7. I think their secondary as well as their linebacking core will help set the pace. Offensively, as long as they still have Deshaun Watson, they're going to always have a chance to go far. And I think their offense won't miss a beat without DeAndre Hopkins. I think they'll do just fine in the passing game. I think the run game will be a little bit more better this year because of the improvements along the offensive line. And we talked about those tight ends and how they like to utilize those guys in the passing game. So I think overall, this is a very solid team, one that should finish atop the AFC South. So that's it for this edition of Football Game Plan's NFL All 32. I am Emory Hunt, the czar of the playbook. Be sure to follow me on all of my social media accounts, and don't forget to check out and subscribe to the Football Game Plan Network located at youtube.com/footballgameplan. Also subscribe on iTunes to Football Game Plan Podcast and leave us a 5-star rating. That's where you can find our NFL All 32 podcast. And keep it locked here on the Football Game Plan YouTube channel for a host of Texans video related content coming down the pike.
It's DUE, you tell I see you by this point, you're reading my mind. It's time for football. We about to keep this thing moving. I'm about it, you're with it, let's do it. We gon' make this thing official, you heard me? If you're the best, then let's prove it. The goal is set to have a team become a unit, man. We about to keep this thing moving. I'm about it, you're with it, let's do it. We gon' make this thing official, you heard me? If you're the best, then let's prove it. The goal is set to have a team become a unit, yeah.